Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Adam Friedland had on Michael Knowles on his program. Michael Knowles is one of the longtime contributors over at the Daily Wire. He has kind of poked through to mainstream relevance only a couple times with the usual Daily Wire method, which is to say something really shocking and appalling and denigrating about some group of people. Matt Walsh has done this over and over again. Ben Shapiro has done this over and over again. And Michael Knowles did it in the case of, he gave some speech where he said something about wanting to eradicate transgenderism. Very particular choice of words. Obviously, the use of the word eradicate is very deliberate there, but to say transgenderism is also kind of a plausible deniability thing. But again, this is pretty par for the course from what you get from the Daily Wire. These are religious zealots and fundamentalists of some kind or another. So that's what you're dealing with people like Michael Knowles. Adam Friedland has been doing this almost Eric Andre-esque style show where he has kind of a serious looking talk show, but then it kind of devolves into gross jokes, and him both trying to have a very humanizing interview with the person he's talking to, but also make fun of them and say absurd things to them and see what they say in response, try to make them uncomfortable. And when you want to hear what the person is saying, that can be a little annoying because he has a habit of interrupting and sort of derailing the conversation. But when it's a guy like Michael Knowles, that's actually a better interview tactic to use, to interrupt them. Definitely don't let him control the conversation. That is the right way to handle having a conversation with a guy like this on your platform, if you're going to do it at all. And overall, I think it's pretty decent. What he does a good job of is embarrassing him and making him uncomfortable, trying to make him look ridiculous for this sort of like obsession with debating gay people and trans people. So all of that is good, and it seems like that was a deliberate approach, and he did it well. I do have some real criticisms, though, for part of how he handled this in a specific way on a specific issue, you know, just at the part of the conversation where they got more into a debate specifically about trans people. I think Adam let Michael get away with too much, because when you're talking to somebody like this, you have to be ready to refute their points. So let me show you a couple minutes of this debate real quick, and then I am going to get pretty into the weeds of talking about what Michael Knowles was saying here, just to make sure that these points are being accurately refuted, because that's a very important. If you're gonna platform a guy like this, you have to do that. So check out this clip real quick.
A lot of your thing is you just debate gay people.
I mean, I did one recently. I did one recently where I debated 25 gay guys.
Knowles versus transgenderism, Knowles versus protesters. That's got 2.4 million.
Oh, well, people will come up at my events. And
Story
so they'll
of
debate
transitioning, 1.4 million. I was gay, she was trans, 1.1 million. Conservative versus trans.
But you know why they started coming after me?
No longer gay.
No longer gay.
Not dating trans is bigoted.
What's that one? Hold on.
Man is confused by why people think he's a man. Heated debate, LGBT. So you just so you argue with gay people.
No,
all the time.
I don't.
They argue. Job?
They argue with me.
You could have gone to finance. Why did you went to Yale? Why did you?
I could have gone to McKinsey or something.
Does this feel like a little bit like?
No, you know why they came up and argued with me?
Why?
Because I gave a speech.
Because you said that they should be eradicated.
That is why. I didn't say they should be eradicated. I said the ideology.
You know what you're doing.
I am being clear with my language.
You're not being clear with your language.
I was being clear. Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
You just said your audience is illiterate. I'm explaining to you the precision of my language.
These people have mostly PhDs in gender studies.
You just said. Fair enough. All right, that's reconciling.
Listen, we're both straight guys, right?
Yes.
We're both men's men.
The alpha men. Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be a gay guy.
Yeah.
What am I going to tell them what it's like to be a gay guy?
It's probably tough. Yeah. Well, you would tell, at least, look, again.
What is the objective, right? So, like, I watched the 20 gay guys versus you.
That sounds worse the way you just told that.
Here's the thing, right? Yeah. I know why you're doing it, right?
Doing what?
What's the objective? If you're debating LGBT person, what's the objective for that debate? Do you want to convince them not to?
They usually come to me with these things, so I guess they're upset that I think we should get rid of transgenderism. So I guess the objective is
what is transgenderism? Is it that transgender people, or is it?
It's the belief that a man can be a woman. That's the.
And
that's
who
the
came up with that? Who's the author of that?
A bunch of deviants and ideologues.
Where'd it come from?
Well, it often is traced back to Magnus Hirschfeld in the 20th century.
Cares? Okay, yeah.
But it's an ideology that has cropped up at various times throughout history. It's kind of Gnostic. It would go back to some of the ancient Gnostics to suggest that your true identity has nothing to do with your body.
Those people didn't have toilet paper. Who cares, dude?
I guess that's true. They had good aqueducts, though.
I don't know, dude. Yeah. But don't you want to be a nice guy? Don't you want to be nice?
No, I don't care about being nice.
Why?
I want to be a good guy. I want to be, courteous.
It's a little nosy. It's a little bit nosy.
It's not nosy when they demand that I lie, and I'm not going to lie because that's a mortal sin.
Do you post in the vid, bro? What I'm seeing from your side is this all day long.
Yeah.
Okay?
But we didn't start it. It was the left that pushed this in the elementary schools and in the sports leagues. This is
what I'm saying, seeing you guys highlighting.
Yeah, because they forced it on us and we reacted.
It doesn't seem to me like a big deal. Right?
Well, if it's not a big deal, then why doesn't the left just give it up? It's not a big deal. Let them give it up.
Give up
transgenderism. Stop putting boys in the girls' bathroom. Stop taking over the sports league. Stop castrating the little kids. Give it up. It's not a big deal. Good. I agree. Then give it up.
No, I'm just saying it's not a big deal. For your guys' agenda, right? I'm not hearing anything about conservative politics, right?
My agenda is the truth in public life.
I'm barely hearing anything about the budget deficit. I'm barely hearing anything about insolvency.
I don't know. Castrating little kids is more important than the budget deficit.
You think that if Social Security is insolvent, that's less of an important issue?
I think.
I'm saying, and that's your guys' issue.
I think Well, yeah, I mean.
I'm not hearing shit about that.
No,
I'm hearing about babies' penises.
Yeah, baby. Well, they're not castrating babies.
You guys talk about kids' penises all day long.
I think
it's a little bit perverse to me.
No, well, we're not the ones who started it. Okay, this is what the libs do. They say, hey, we're going to chop up little kids. We're going to teach them a bunch of weird sex stuff in kindergarten. And if you object, you're the weird one. Why are you talking about this? Because you're doing it. It's weird, man.
Is it happening?
Yeah.
Is it happening all the time?
All over the country. Well, now it's since there have been laws.
All the kids are getting their penises chopped.
Not all the kids.
How many kids are getting their penises chopped?
How
many guys?
Any number larger than zero
are playing sports? It's like 5 people.
Yeah, no, it's more. There was a study. A study just came out of the UN. It was something like 700 awards and medals were taken away from women because of the trans guys in the
700 medals.
The liberal politicians came out and said we need to castrate kids, and then
I don't think that's true.
You don't think that we castrate kids?
I think that's.
You don't think we do the trans procedures on kids?
I don't think Pelosi said we need to cut their dicks off.
Said we need to support trans children. That is a euphemism to mean we need to put them on cross-sex hormones and in some cases mutilate
across the board, whether they're trans or not.
It's been coast to coast.
Weren't able.
Coast to coast. National politicians like Nancy Pelosi.
Bro. You're talking about something that is probably just a statistical insignificance, and you're highlighting it.
Election was
you're highlighting it. You're highlighting it.
It's not. It's a
You're highlighting
it
to vilify an entire group of people.
I'm not vilifying anyone. I really don't agree with the premise. I mean, there are a lot of things to talk about.
You know that I won that one. You know I just won that one.
I don't.
You went to Yale too, bro.
Yeah, I don't. No, I don't.
You went to Yale and I won that one.
Did you?
Damn.
All right. So like I said, I think Adam, for the most part, did a decent job here. He did a good job at cutting in, kind of keeping Michael Knowles on the back foot. And not letting him bogart the conversation too much. But I think even in doing that, he missed some really key moments and allowed Michael Knowles to get his point across without having a great refutation. And rhetorically, what Adam usually does on this show is he has the kind of like lethargy and the sort of like, who cares about that? What are you even talking about, man? Come on. And like that can be pretty effective. And I think in this conversation, it was pretty effective, except for the fact that when you're talking to somebody like this, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a worldview right in front of you. They're trying to articulate an entire worldview in front of you and your audience because they know that their position is reactionary. They know that their job is to articulate something that counters as much of the general narrative of mainstream society, science, politics, etc. as possible. And so they have to both make it sound legitimate and articulate it fully enough to kind of start to get the gears turning in people's mind at the same time. And so that's why the only way to talk to a person like this is to try to cut down what they're saying at the stem. You have to cut it off at the hilt so that they don't have the opportunity to explain how all of these things connect in their mind. I think Adam does a lot of preparation when it comes to who he's talking to, learning their background. He knew a lot of things about Michael Knowles going into this interview, and that's great. But he also should have known some of these points that Michael Knowles was going to make. And it did not seem like Adam was prepared enough on the facts to refute what he said quickly. But the reality is he knows that it doesn't matter if he gets humiliated, it doesn't matter if he looks stupid. He knows all he has to do is laugh along, because if he can get a few points across, he knows that this worldview sounds good enough to people that at least a couple people out there are going to buy it and walk away more convinced by it. And so you just have to be prepared for that tactic. So the first place that it would have been great to cut in is when he says this thing about Magnus Hirschfeld. So they're talking about transgenderism, and Adam correctly says ism. What's ism? That was the right thing to drill down on. And he says, well, it's popped up in a few different places in history. He's referencing the fact that being transgender has existed all throughout human history in different forms and with different names, but it's actually a very consistent thread of human behavior and the human experience. And he says that in some cases it's tied back to Magnus Hirschfeld. And he kind of says that in a way of saying that, these are deviants. A few deviants came up with this idea. Would have been really great to point out that what he's referring to there is when everybody talks about how one of the first things Nazis went after in Nazi Germany is studies about gay people, transgender people, and the academics who did that work. Magnus Hirschfeld is the person that they're talking about. And he wasn't in Germany at the time when Nazis came to power, but the work that he did was the foundational work that Nazis went after and tried to eradicate from their society. And even before the Nazis were in power, Magnus Hirschfeld's work was very controversial in Germany, saying things like, homosexuality is natural, and testifying on behalf of somebody who he knew, saying that he was gay and he didn't think there was anything wrong with that. That caused a ton of outrage in Germany. And yes, this guy's work was foundational to the understanding of being transgender that we have now, as well as homosexuality. And so right there, the first place that this guy goes is to point out one of the number one enemies of the Nazi regime when they came into power. And it seems to me that that would have been a great thing to point out. Oh, I knew you were going to say that, actually, Michael, because I've heard you say that before. Don't you think it's weird that one of your targets, the targets of your rhetoric and what you want to eradicate from society, is the same as what the Nazis saw fit to eradicate from society? That's the kind of thing that people look at about you and make you say, oh, you must want to eradicate people because that's what the Nazis did and you're repeating their rhetoric. That's what the kind of thing you have to say to a guy like Michael Knowles. And, instead Adam's approach was, who cares about that guy, whatever. And again, that's an approach, that's a tactic. He's trying to make it look like he's a try-hard dork, and that's the way Adam approaches these things, and I appreciate that. But in this moment, I think it would have been helpful to consider the fact that Michael Knowles was obviously going to go there. And the other thing he keeps continually trying to do is build up this thing about, well, liberal politicians came out and said that they're going to cut up kids and we're going to castrate kids and we're going to put all this weird stuff in the schools and in the sports and blah, blah, blah. And so we came out. So that's another point where you can completely cut him down. And Adam does it a little bit, but what does he say? He says, I don't think that's true. Sorry, that's not enough. You can't talk to a guy like this and say, I don't think what you're saying is true, because they study this shit. Their arguments are not based in fact, and in fact what they're doing is they're trying to make a counter argument to fact. But they know that that's what they're doing. So they know that they have to know their shit. Some of them are complete idiots. A guy like Michael Knowles knows what he's saying. And so when he says this stuff about castrating kids and, the liberal politicians want to come out and do all this weird shit, that's when you immediately cut in and you say, no, actually what you're talking about is science. The reason that liberal politicians, people on the left, have gravitated towards support for trans people, making sure that they have the care that they need, even in some cases at a young age, which I'll get to in a second, is because that is what the science shows is the best way to treat gender dysphoria. The people who study this shit and study the way it affects kids, both the condition itself and also the treatment for the condition itself, are landing on the conclusion that giving people gender-affirming care in the first place is the best way to make sure that they have positive outcomes in their life. And so what the conservatives are going to do at that point is they're going to try to say, well, there's this study or there's that study. The foundational study behind this is still solid. It has not been refuted. The scientific information is still on the side that gender-affirming care is still the best way to treat gender dysphoria. The only argument that Michael Knowles has against that is that they don't want that to be true. They want it to be true that by turning to God and turning yourself over to God and praying and having faith, you can be cured of these afflictions because it is God's view that a man and a woman is what he created and no deviation from that should be allowed. That's what these guys believe in. So the problem with his ideology is not the word eradicate, although that's certainly telling, and it's not the fact that it's lame and he should be talking about budget deficits, although that's true. The problem is that this is fundamentalism, that they are trying to make political arguments for straight up fundamentalism that is not based in science at all. And the main place that we've lost the plot as a society is we have allowed people like this who are just straight up fundamentalists. They don't believe in science. They don't believe in a secular society. They don't believe in the separation of church and state. And we have allowed them to take up way too much space in the discourse. And especially part of the reason that that problem has occurred is because people don't accurately call out that what they're saying is the opposite of science, and they can't back it up based on science. Even what he says about all the medals that have been taken from women in this study, he is talking about a UN related study, but it's not a study that speaks for all of the UN. It is just something that was promoted by somebody who works within it, and it's a suspect study. They didn't even in this study specify what events they're talking about. Across 29 sports, 400 competitions, they don't specify what events, levels of competition, or time periods they're talking about. How are you supposed to take that information seriously if that isn't even presented? That's the kind of stuff that they use to bolster their arguments. And if you don't know your shit, if you don't look into it a little bit, then you got to be like, oh, well, that sounds kind of convincing. And then they advance. And that's a problem. And so the last thing, and maybe I'll end it on this, I want to make sure that we're clear about something, which is the argument in favor of children receiving gender-affirming care. The reason I want to make this argument is because I don't think it's often made, and I don't think people understand this well enough. And Michael Knowles is correct that the right wing has made a lot of progress with people on this, especially using this idea of transing kids, mutilating kids, whatever, as a cudgel to say the left has lost their mind and they're insane. Obviously, when it comes to people being treated, whether they're adults or children, it's all based in science. It has nothing to do with left-wing ideology. But okay, put that aside. The point here that people need to understand, agree or disagree with this, I really need people to listen here. The argument that is made by scientists who study this, people who do in fact have children's best interests in mind, is that if a kid has gender dysphoria, in other words, consistently questions their own gender in a way that is documented and discussed with doctors with the consent of their parent as well, then the problem is once that child has experienced puberty, something irreversible has happened to their body. And a person who is in fact transgender but does not receive care by the time they reach puberty, most of them are going to have a much harder time transitioning into the bodies that they want. Not everybody who's trans becomes aware of it early in life, and in some cases it's not necessary for them to get treatment. But the studies show that kids who are in fact transgender and show signs of that dysphoria from early in life, who receive first puberty blockers, which is a reversible treatment. Puberty blockers are reversible, and in fact, they used to be used to treat early onset of puberty. So all it does is delay the process of puberty. So normally that will be the first step. is if a child has documented experience with gender dysphoria, as discussed between their parents and their doctor, they may get put on puberty blockers, which will delay the permanent alteration of their body through puberty. The important thing to understand about this is that puberty blockers are reversible, but puberty is not. Once puberty happens to a person who is transgender, their body is permanently altered in a way that they may never be happy with. And it is true, although it's icky for some people and it's hard for some people to wrap their heads around, it is possible to identify that in a child who is younger than 18. And there are procedures for understanding that in people who are younger than 18 that are different from people who are older than 18 or even younger than 16. It also needs to be noted that there are virtually no cases of surgery that happen on children. That is something that these right-wing people say all the time. It is a lie. They are lying. They do not do surgeries, especially bottom surgeries, on kids. In some cases, you'll see breast reduction surgeries, but that also is done on children who are not receiving gender-affirming care. There are people under the age of 18 who receive breast reductions. And so what they have to do is they have to lump all of these things together. They have to say that liberals are coming out and saying we want to trans and mutilate your kids, we want to give them irreversible drugs, and we want to do surgeries on them to mutilate them. None of that is true. And when you actually look into how it works, it is done in a way that certainly protects the children and is meant to be implemented in a way that they can reverse the decision if they decide that's what they want to do. And drugs that do have a somewhat permanent effect, like certain hormone treatments that happen down the line, don't happen until later. Until a person who, by the way, has been decided to be mentally competent to make this decision for themselves. There are procedures that happen with doctors and parents that decide that. And so what this comes down to is there's a procedure for all of these things. And so I don't even think it's the right argument to say this is such a minuscule, minute amount of people, because even though that's true, the problem isn't that. The problem isn't that we shouldn't be thinking about this at all. The problem is that they are lying about how this works, because in the words of Michael Knowles himself, they want to eradicate this. They want to take this back to the root, to the first person who was doing scientific studies and research about this topic, and they want to eradicate it because they don't care about what's true, and they do not care about what's scientifically verifiable. What they care about is the Bible. So I think I'll leave that there. I may not have made, these arguments perfectly, and I'm open to being corrected on some of these things if you guys have suggestions. But my main objection to what Adam did here, I think for the most part it was good. And I don't necessarily think that it's unforgivable or unthinkable to platform a guy like Michael Knowles. But I think if you're going to do it, you definitely have to have your bedrock of information straight. And I think we could get some great content and some great conversations out of Adam continuing to do this exact format. But please, I beg of you, if you're going to do this going forward, do the exact same amount of jokes and bullshitting and have your facts straight just a little bit more if you're going to talk to a guy like this. It's easy for me to say because I can just fact check the things that he said, whereas you have to go and try to prepare for the things he might say. That's hard to do. But please, if you're going to have a guy like this on your platform, you just got to do it.
Pressure getting pressed, do you feel it now? What even happens next, I don't really know. Voice carries less, can you hear me now? Soon as I get blessed, time's running out. Pressure getting pressed. Pressure getting pressed. Feel the pressure getting pressed. Yeah. Pressure, do you feel it now? I'm just saying this.